Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Rekha Pandey from the Department of History in the University of Hyderabad. The module that I am going to speak on now is Women and the Social Movements in Post-Independent India. This is part of the Women's Studies course, the third paper on women and history. And I am going to focus on the social movements in post-independent India. Primarily talking about two major movements, the Chipko movement in Uttarakhand and the anti-Arak movement in Andhra Pradesh. Now, in one of the earlier modules, I was talking about how women formed organization even prior to India became independent and till the present day. And now, since we didn't have enough time in that module to talk about the two major movements, I'm going to take them up in this module. Now, when you look at the women's movement in India, it is very diverse. If you look at the cultural, historical, geographical, religious and political conditions of our country, they are so diverse, and these have contributed a lot to the women's movement. In fact, the women's movement began in 19th century in India as a social reform movement. And at this time, you had a large number of Western educated elite. They were very much perturbed by the condition of Indian women. And you had a large number of reformers who came up. People like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Viresh Lingam, Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, and they played a major role in highlighting women's question. To a large extent, they were also assisted by the British. In fact, it was primarily because of the British, who were criticizing Indians, saying that, they were not treating their women properly, that these reformers took up these reform. Many of these social reformists in this period, they channelized Indian society by introducing a large number of constitutional and legal provisions for protecting women from discrimination. You also had a large number of Britishers like Macaulay, Bentinck, Bethune, who contributed towards this process. And then, they were followed by a large number of women like Anandi Bai, Pandita Rama Bai, Sukumari, Rukaiya Hussain, Sarala Devi, Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay. They were all also very much involved in these movements. Now, not only in India, but all over the world, there is a very close link between the women's movement and feminism. Each has drawn inspiration from the other. They have, in the process, they have enriched each other. Now, while the women's movement is a much earlier phenomena, the term feminism is a very modern one. Feminism is said to be a movement to end women's oppression. Now, in the post-Indian context, many groups were not comfortable with the term feminism, and they did not identify their struggle for women's rights in these terms. But today, by and large, feminism is a term which is understood to denote political stance of someone who is committed to changing the social position of women. In fact, in the post-independence period, the women's movement concerned itself with a large number of issues. They were talking about dowry, women's work, price rise, land rights, political participation, Dalit women, marginalized women. They were also talking of fundamentalism, the way women are presented in media. So, they were talking of large number of issues, but I am going to only focus on two major movements who were talking of two different issues. The first one is the Chipko movement. It came about in 1970s and 1980s, and this was a period where, a large number of forests were being destroyed, not only in Uttarakhand but throughout India, and this movement came to be known as Chipko movement. The first Chipko action took place spontaneously in a village called Raini village in Gopeshwar district in Chamoli in 1974. And in the next 5 years, it spread to many districts of the Himalayas in Uttar Pradesh. And the Chipko movement was as a result of hundreds of decentralized local autonomous initiative. The leaders and activists were primarily village women. They were acting to save their means of subsistence and their communities. Men were also involved in this movement. However, some of these gave a wider leadership to the movement, but you had large number of women who were participating. In fact, the Chipko movement began in 1971 as a movement by local people under the leadership of Dasoli Gram Swarajya Sangh, DGSS, to assert their rights over forest produce. Initially, demonstrations were organized in different parts of Uttarakhand. They were demanding abolition of the contractual system of exploiting forest wealth. Prior to this, many of the local forest-based industries were associated with a large number of these organizations. People were involved in the management of forests, but slowly government started giving the rights to these to certain private contractors. Now the Chipko movement in the Uttarakhand region of Himalayas is often treated as a women's movement because they were trying to protect the forest ecology of the Uttarakhand from the access of these contractors. But the reason behind women's participation is more economic than ecological. In fact, economics and ecological interests of Uttarakhand are very much interwoven, that it is very difficult to promote one without promoting the other. The Chipko movement was very inimical to gender, the theoretical underpinnings as well as the political and economic ones. Women and children used to gather food work for domestic consumption. They relied on the forest for combustible crop residues such as rice straw. However, the rice straw was considered inferior to fuel wood. Therefore, a large number of forest activities that increase the availability of fuel wood and development projects that promote improved stove both release women from labor of fuel collection. But then we find that this was having a lot of impact. It was also improving agricultural environment because the crop residue was better used for enriching the depleting soils. The government decision to allot forest trees to a sports good company was the major issue that kind of became the immediate reason for this movement. The local residents in Gopeshwar were denied the similar demands of, they had just demanded few trees so that they could make tools for their farms, but they were not given this, and instead the government gave this whole contract to a sports good company. Now Mr. Chandi Prasad Bhatt of the Dasoli Gram Swarajya Sangh, he wanted to establish small industries. He wanted to use the forest resources so that he could provide a large number of jobs to the local youth. As we all know, many of the youth are migrating from Uttarakhand, and the whole economy there is referred to as money order economy because these men and boys send back money order, and that is how the women and children then survive. Now Gaura Devi was the head of the Mahila Mangal Dal, and she was the one who mobilized a large number of village women and the company of with the company of men, she marched and tried to stop the cutting of trees. The Chipko movement was a very important movement because it showed us that many of the solution to our present day problem lie in re-establishing a very harmonious relationship between humans and nature. In fact, if we want to keep this relationship permanent, then we have to define how we understand real development. A real development has to be synonymous with culture. The very sublimate nature the way we achieve peace, happiness, prosperity, and how these are fulfilled. How do we satisfy our basic needs? You know, Sundarlal Bahuguna says that these are very important issues, and we need to address this when we are talking of culture. You know, we never talk of these issues, but he wants to focus on many of these issues. But slowly, you know, the Chipko movement became very successful. It spread to many states in the country. You know, there was a stopping of the felling of the trees in the Western Ghat and Vindhyas. It also generated pressure on the government to formulate a natural resource policy. In fact, in 1980, there was a great victory when there was a ban placed for 15 years in the Himalayan regions that no trees, green trees could be felled. More than 1 lakh trees were saved from excavation. And slowly, you know, there was a major movement towards protecting forest slopes and restoring the bare ones. So, you know, the Chipko movement, a movement initiated by women and also supported by men, you know, it increased environment awareness to a large extent. And it showed that, you know, develop new methods of forest farming. And it stated that we need to look at these so that, you know, we are able to protect our forests, conserve our forest, and also create employment. By 1981, more than 1 million trees were planted as a result of efforts of many of these groups. The villagers paid special attention to the care of trees, and forest trees were being used very judiciously. The Chipko movement had a lot of inspiration. You know, it had diverse experiences, strategies, motivation. It inspired environmentalists both nationally and globally, and it contributed substantially to the emergence of the whole philosophy of ecofeminism and the deep ecology. And you know, it was very much responsible for creation of a community-based conservation so that, you know, there is sustained development. Now, you know, because of this whole policy of protection and afforestation, you know, it never focused on the needs of the women. And the Chipko movement became a very important movement in this connection. And it tried to show that, you know, women had a lot of direct concerns in these issues. You had large number of afforestation camps that came up. Many of the Mangal Dals in the villages were formed, and we find that many women stood up for election in the village panchayats. Some of them became village head. Earlier, women were only passive listeners in these camps, and but now, you know, in one of the camps which was organized around 1982, women with breastfeeding children, they were able to walk. They walked about 18 kilometers to participate in the afforestation camp. And earlier, you know, the women were just limbs of the movement, but now they rose to the level of acquiring leadership roles in this movement. Now I am going to talk about another movement which occurred in Andhra Pradesh, and this is the anti-arak movement. Arak is rectified spirits which is obtained by distilling fermented molasses. Now, as a result of Green Revolution in India, we find that sugarcane production increased, and it led to an increase in sugar production and its byproduct, that is molasses. And this was diverted into making arak. Now, this whole process cost the Andhra Pradesh government 1 rupee per litre. But after auctioning, it was sold to the contractors at about 10 rupees 60 paisa or 11 rupees per litre. You know, the government of Andhra Pradesh used to sell rights to various contractors so that only they had the monopoly to make liquor and sell liquor in those regions. Now, what the contractors did, they packeted these into small sachets. And by the time it reached consumers, it would cost anything between 95 to 96 rupees per litre. And let me remind you, for a process which costs the government 1 rupee per litre, by the time it reaches consumers, it is 96 per litre. So therefore, you know, the 812 crores per annum revenue which the government of Andhra Pradesh was getting was only 1/6 of the total amount, and the rest of that money, this is only that 10 rupees 60 paisa or 11 rupees per litre, the rest of it, more than 5/6 of this was kept by the contractor. It was the liquor barons that were ruling the roost in Andhra Pradesh. They were dominating politics, society and the cultural life. Now, under political patronage, many of these contractors became full-time politicians. See, earlier they used to seek the help of the politician to maintain their monopoly, to, they would give bribe to the police, to the goons. But now they themselves, became politicians. They could, maintain their monopoly through bribing the police, excise officials, and all of them had these various gangs who would help them with their ARAC earning, and rest of the money which they got, they invested it in real estate, they built finances, they donated some of this to religious causes. Now, it was not that suddenly the revenues of the government, in 70 to 71, the revenue was 39 crores. And by the time you come to 91 to 92, it increased to 812 crores. This was not something which came about very innocently. And it is not that, suddenly people started drinking so much that the government was getting so much revenue. Far from being a trade to cater to addicts, this became a campaign to create more and more addicts. The culture of Andhra was such that earlier most of the men would go outside the village. After a hard day's labor, both men and women would go outside the village. They would sit in a Sara compound, they would have a drink and then get back home. But then there was a new program started by the government called Varun Vahini program. And what they did, liquor was packeted into sachets and it reached the very doorstep of the people. Now, as a result of this, it had lot of impact. And it had more impact on the men than the women. It eroded the family economy completely. Men became parasites on the family. How much ever the women would drink, she had to think of her children, she had to cook for the family. So, men really became parasites. There was a lot of violence on women. The men demanded nisu, that is mutton and fish, and they did not want to eat an ordinary meal of rice and pickle, which many of these poor, landless labor families were having. So, the illiterate, marginalized, exploited women, they did not understand this whole politics of liquor. They only saw an immediate relationship between their problems and their men drinking. It was only, they could not see, this whole, scheme of the large interest in this whole issue. They only saw a connection between their day-to-day struggle for survival and the men drinking. And it was only in the long run that they realized that they were confronting not only the contractor, the liquor goons, but even the government at large. Now, one of the major reasons why this movement came about was because of the literacy movement. Generally, besides the traditional model of reading and writing, the National Literacy Mission, which was implemented in Nellore district from 1991, it had a totally different kind of focus. It recognized that development has to be an instrument of change to bring about an improvement of women. And it adapted a campaign approach. It prepared these small primers for target group related to relevant issues. And it would, there was a lot of discussion. It would also convey the need for literacy through songs, dance dramas, and street plays. Besides this, there were a large number of groups called Kala Jatras and Jan Chetan Kendras. The Kala Jatras were cultural performers. They spoke of the issue of literacy, but then they also spoke of other issues like exploitation, low wages, untouchability, social evils like dowry, heavy drinking, wife beating. Then you had the Jana Chetan Kendras, the Center for People's Awareness. These became a very important meeting place for women. They discussed, these women sat together in these compounds. They discussed with other women. They shared their experiences. Now, one of the primers which the women was using was Sita Katha, the story of Sita. This was a lesson written in Telugu where, one of the wife of a liquor addict, her name is Sita. She tries a lot to reform her husband, and finally, when she is not able to reform her husband, she commits sati. Now, when this lesson was read in a village called Dubugunta in Nellore district, a large number of women, they started talking to each other, and then they realized that in a group of 30, more than 28 of these women were suffering from the same problem. Then one woman said that she had also thought of suicide many times. And finally, these women decided that, they had to do something about this issue. And they felt that, if they just go and close the liquor shop, liquor will not be available and the men will not drink. So all these women marched up to the liquor shop. And when the liquor seller said that, how will I feed my family? Because my earning depends on this. These were, mind you, marginalized, landless women. They all said that they will pay 1 rupee from their income, but they did not allow the liquor shop to open. So for the first time, the liquor shop did not open, the men did not get any liquor, and there was no drinking in that village. Now immediately after this motivated another primer called Adavalu Ekmaite, that is, if women unite, and it showed that how women were successful in closing the arak shop, and because of the efforts of women, they were able to bring about this change. And it showed that this was primarily because women were joining the literacy classes. Now when this lesson was read throughout the region of Andhra Pradesh, it almost created a large number of groups. There were various committees formed in villages, and many of these women felt that the existence of the liquor shop in their village made it impossible for them to stop their husbands from drinking. So one of the major demands which came out of this movement was no selling of arak in our villages. Now the question which the women put to the government, they said that in our villages there are no school, there are no proper wages, there are no proper roads, but we have so many arak shops. A very important slogan of the movement was that drinking water once in 3 days, but arak thrice a day. So, soon when they were asking questions to these, the government was in a fix. It had no answer to the women's question. The women were able to organize Rasta Roko, road blockades. They stopped the collectorates from functioning. In fact, women in the Kotla village took their husbands to the local temple. They made them vow that they will give up liquor. And if they would break their vow, they were penalized with 2,000 rupees. Similarly, women in many other villages also, in Sai Penta village, we found that 500 women joined together in July 92. They had an open meeting. They asked for a ban on arak. Now, when women were going out openly, breaking these arak packets, destroying liquor, it affected the trade of these liquor contractors. So they filed a case against them, and many of the women were arrested. In the Naval Kutta Thatta, women faced the armed goons of the arak contractors. In Ravur, women were beaten up, and many of these women carried chili powders, stones, and they would throw these at the police, at the goons of the liquor contractors. Soon about 200 shops were shut down and 300 were partially closed in many districts. And women did not allow any arak shop to be opened in many of these villages. In fact, in many of the villages when we traveled, women maintained registers to show how many shops were closed, how many were partially open in these districts. Soon, the movement spread to other districts. In Kurnool, the leadership was taken up by the Progressive Organization of Women. They tried to stop the liquor auctions. Many of these women lay in front of collector's car and they refused to move. Women in Sunipenta village gathered on the outskirts. They sat on the road for 36 hours demanding that arak vehicles return back. When the chief minister visited Sri Sailam, 500 women joined together, they gave a dharna, and when they were not allowed to meet the chief minister, they refused to leave till they were given a meeting with them. When they met the chief minister finally, he refused to give an answer, and he said that he cannot give them an answer because he cannot take an individual decision. He has to consult his cabinet. Now these women retorted back saying that, do you really consult your cabinet for everything, for every decision that you take? Now these were women who could not even speak a word earlier, but now in this getting together, in this unity, they found so much strength that they could even question a chief minister. Even in Chittoor district, we find that the movement spread. In the Ingmala village, the women closed arrack shops, they formed anti-arrack committees. Nearly 5,000 postcards were dropped to the chief minister so that he could ban arrack. In fact, women wrote to the prime minister, they took the help of school children, and they asked the prime minister to ban arrack. Many of the women became so militant that they attacked godowns, they destroyed 2 lakh worth of arrack. Now, after these districts, Nellore, Chittoor, the scene shifted to the urban areas, and Hyderabad became the meeting point of all these groups. Many meetings were held, dharnas were given, awareness camps were built, and many of the women went into slum areas to create awareness. Now, throughout this agitation, the government took a stand that it needed revenue from the arrack because it was carrying out various welfare activities like providing 2 kilo per kg rice at subsidized rates. The women then retorted that, the government was giving with the right hand and taking it away with the left hand, because whatever subsidies they were getting, men were spending it on arrack. The arrack contractors also fought for this, and initially, they were not very much bothered about this movement. They thought these are few women who are making hue and cry, and the movement will die its natural death. But however, soon when they saw that their business was being affected, the movement is spreading like a wildfire, they could not operate their business, then they gave a memorandum to the government saying that, they will not be able to pay the cost to the government, when they had purchased the rights through the auction, because they were not able to carry on their business. They also filed a writ petition in High Court saying that they were losing their livelihood. They were forced by the, they also forced the excise commissioner to order that the district administration opens arrack shop. And there was a period in between, when arrack was sold with police protection. You had a jeep carrying these liquor, and 2 policemen would sit taking the liquor to the village. Slowly, the opposition parties stepped in. They wanted a policy decision by the government on this whole issue of excise auction. They raised a lot of hue and cry as to how women were being beaten, how there were charges against women being filed. And let me remind you, this was a period where the Congress was in power and Telugu Desam was the opposition party. So they took advantage of this. And we find that in the district, the arrack auctions were postponed many times because women did not allow these to be held. Now slowly, bowing down to the pressure, the government took a very bold decision, and on 1st October 1993, it banned arrack. There was a total loss of, more than 600 crores per annum to the government. But it took this bold decision. The excise department was entrusted with the job that it would prevent smuggling of arrack from the neighboring state. It has given magisterial power to deal with bootleggers. Now, however, the women's group found that the victory was very short-lived and their struggle came to naught, because the following years, when arrack is prohibited, there is an increase in the consumption of toddy, which was not banned. This was adulterated with diazepam, with chloral hydrate, so that it could get more kick. There was another kind of liquor available, which is called the Indian-made foreign liquor, IMFL. This was not banned. This is an Indian liquor sold in foreign bottles. So now the women's group felt that unless they demand a total prohibition, and unless there is prohibition of any liquor should not be allowed, their whole struggle would come to naught. And they formed a joint action committee to deal with this issue. In a rally on 2nd October 1994, the then opposition leader N.T. Rama Rao declared that if he would be elected to power, he would declare the state as a total prohibition state. Now, in the elections in December, his Telugu Desam party got a major victory. It won 214 seats out of 294. At the swearing-in ceremony on 12 December, he declared that the state would follow total prohibition. From 1st January 1995, the manufacture, selling and consumption of liquor became an offence in Andhra Pradesh. An ordinance was promulgated to amend the Excise Act. The manufacture of liquor became illegal and punishable with conviction and fines up to 1 lakh rupees. However, there was a lot of political development after this. In a coup, Chandrababu Naidu, the son-in-law and one of the member of the cabinet, he wrested power from N.T. Rama Rao and he became the chief minister. Now, Chandrababu Naidu was a very savvy politician and he was in a catch-21 situation. He realized that the total prohibition was a very populist measure of the government, like subsidized rice, cheap electricity. Now, if he gave up prohibition, he annoyed the women's group due to whom they had got this majority. But then the financial situation of the state was also becoming worse day by day. Now, in the period that followed, there was a divided opinion. There was an increase in water cess, electricity charges and other taxes. Now, many of the women's group felt that the rural areas witnessed a lot of change. There was a reduction in domestic violence, increase in saving. So many of the women's group argued that the government should find other sources for its expenditure. It should look for other sources of revenue. And many people felt that the government had no business to impose a moral code on people's habits. They felt that India is a democracy, each one has a right. So if the government wanted, it should lift the ban from IMFL and those who can afford can continue to drink. So, there was a total division of political opinion and soon the policy began to sag and we find that slowly it was removed in a very phased and defensive manner. By the fact of the end of the year, there was no prohibition, though again, liquor prices continued to remain very high when compared to other states. So, we can conclude that this was a women's movement and first time it saw the articulation of a family violence at a public forum. It was a very spontaneous movement which came about as a result of the awareness created by the literacy program, which provided a space for it. There was no organized leadership. Most of it came about with the help of local initiative. And the village became central. There was no detailed planning of agendas. Women took action on the spot depending on the situation. They devised their own methods of imposing fine and punishing the violators. In fact, women got a lot of self-confidence and a sense of power throughout this. They used a large number of cultural forms. It saw so much of creativity. You had women's groups performing street plays, reciting poems, songs. When they marched in procession, they used these forms like Burakatha, Harikatha, Ogukatha, Yakshagana to fight against liquor. And they were, new words were coined in this period. Whenever, they referred to the government, it was referred to as Sarakoru, from Dagakoru, that is a cheater. The government was referred to as Sarakoru Sarkar, a government that cheats on liquor. It referred to the government as Sara Rajyam, derived from the word Ram Rajyam, a rule for morality. But this was a government which was ruling on Arak for the benefit of few. It also used words like Sara Amsham, all about liquor, from the word Saramsham, when it was talking about liquor. So therefore, many say that the movement did not really lead to any success because prohibition sagged. But I would certainly not look upon this movement as a failure. It continued, though liquor prohibition was removed, the movement could not maintain its momentum, but it continued to exercise a lot of pressure on state. It created the necessary awareness of raising consciousness in the countryside so that, women were able to take control of their own life situation. It gave a lot of strength to the other existing movements like Panchayati Raj, which were being carried out at the grassroots level. Women also became aware of their strength and their ability to change in society. Therefore, when I look at these two movements in post-independent India, though they were occurring in two different corners of India, one in Uttarakhand and one in Andhra Pradesh. The one was focusing on the ecological issues, one was focusing on liquor. They had a lot of similarities. And it gave a lot of impetus to women's movement. It gave a lot of strength to these women where they could question the big wigs. Many of these movements were very sporadically organized. Women took decision on the spur, and they came together to deal with these issues. And this is one of the strength of the women's movement in India. Thank you.